So part of their planning process will be identifying their indicators, working to develop a measurement system instead of the reverse, instead of, I guess, big bad government coming in and saying, you know, this is what you should be doing and this is how you should be successful. We are trying, and it is something different, to allow innovators to tell us what success looks like for them and how to measure their success. So to make sure that from the very beginning, they are empowered to make the best choices, that they are constantly monitoring their success and being able to course correct rather than coming in and giving that pop quiz or that test and then saying, you failed, we're setting you up for success and let's see if it works. My position is that it will work and that all of our innovators will be successful and that their rigor that they're applying to their work on the front end is greater than anything I could have come up with externally, because you are in those communities and your heart is there, and so you know what success looks like, and most often it looks like a changed life in an improved community. But tell me how to measure it. Tell us to know when you're successful. Let's look at those benchmarks along the way, and as you are moving through your work, then you say, oh, we haven't met the benchmark that we've set for ourselves. Our indicator in this particular area is lower than anticipated. Let's change that. So I think the take-home message is empower yourself by setting up your own rigor. Do it before someone else tells you what it is, because if someone else comes in, they're not going to understand the breadth and depth of your work the way that you can. So set the stage from the beginning. So as you plan a new program, put in place those measurements, those indicators, the system of continuous improvement, as Andrew discussed earlier, and then your donors, then your government agencies that continue to support you, and all of your other funders will know that you are on a path to success.
Yes, I think evaluation is really the crux of the matter. I mean, I sit here and I tell you I work for the most successful LNG company in the world. You don't take my word for it. You are assuming, and rightly so, that I have a lot of numerical data to back that statement up. And it's the same thing now, I think, for the nonprofits. They have to start thinking about how they evaluate and what are they evaluating. In my mind, the nonprofit is no longer just a provider of some good or service. It's a provider of a transformational outcome, a transformational impact. And that has to be measured. And I do appreciate that that is difficult at times. So you have to start, at least even, qualitatively, to do that. And I'll give you the Habitat, BG Habitat Builders is still in my mind because we just completed it. That's a good example. You may look at that and think, well, right, I put someone in a house. That's the output, a house. The outcome of that is that I have actually placed a family in a home and who will now be contributing to a tax revenue base in a specific geographic area, because they are now part of the mortgage pay and all the rest of it. That is measurable. That's a quantitative piece of information. So that's where it needs to go. And I think if you start thinking like that and building that into your programs, you will find that sponsorship will actually come much easier, because you've got to move the dial from the feel-good factor. You can't compete on the basis of making corporate responsibility managers like myself cry at the rightness of your project. It doesn't work that way. You've got to show that you've got the analyses that supports the fact that you've done your homework and you know what is the issue that you're trying to address, how is that gap going to be filled by what you're projecting to do, who is your target audience, and what is going to be success, and how is that measured. When you go to a sponsor or a funder like myself with that sort of information, then you're competing on the basis of excellence. And I also think it will help to spark innovative thinking. Because I don't want to decry the fact that we've got restrictions on capacity and capability and resources. I suffer the same thing. I wish I had 5 of me in the office. But the reality is that is going to be so always. What you don't have a restriction on is your ability to think, and to think out of the box.
So I'm going to ask you all, and I'll try to do a summation of some of the things I've heard, but ask you all to answer the following question, and then I'll close this out. So I think hopefully made people actually feel a little uncomfortable earlier. And I think this conversation is furthering that, I said in another talk I gave that, we can call it social innovation, we can call it social entrepreneurship, we can call it the social sector, but I do fundamentally believe that as I travel around, what we're just talking about is what works. So what's working and how do we figure out how to get more of what's working? So from each of the places you sit right now, what do you think is the biggest challenge that either individually you see your work facing or collectively you see this work facing that could stand in the way of us advancing this sort of what works mindset in some way? Well, what is that biggest challenge that you can bestow that can give us an eye on what we should be watching out for? And who would like to start?
From my point of view, I think, and I wish I had more diplomatic language to express it, but really it's complacency. On both sides of the fence, both in our world and in the non-profit world. I'm an outsider. I've come from our UK offices, and I've come to Texas where everything is indeed bigger, including the generosity of their hearts. But it's not business as usual, and the assumption that money will flow irrespective of what's happening in the world it's not true. The other thing is, non-profits. I've always had money, it'll come, it's not going to be any different. Well, that's just, we employ the best futurists and economists in the world, and they'll tell you that's not the case at all. The other thing is, I struggle with the way non-profits describe themselves to me. Invariably, they recite a number of statistics that really are meaningless in the true sense of the word, because what I need for you to articulate is what makes you unique. What truly makes you unique? What is it that you bring to the table that is so different from any other? And that, I find, has been a struggle in my encounters with NPOs. The other thing, of course, is what we all fear. The fear of something new, of thinking differently, of trying something new. You have to have the support to do that. And you also have to keep focused. You can't be all things to all men. Sometimes I meet NPOs that seem to be trying to do a million things, and you really can't. The non-profit world is not any different in my mind to the corporate world. You have hierarchies, you've got business units, it's very similar. And the dialogue definitely has to change. That's the other thing, the dialogue has to change. We were laughing last night because they were calling me the Gordon Ramsay of philanthropy down there, but because I said if we start the discussion with the thought that I am some benevolent do-gooder, and you are some struggling non-profit, a poor supplicant versus a benevolent sponsor, then that's not going to get us anywhere. We are both people with resources, capabilities, and capacity to address this social problem. And what we are problem solvers. There is not an inequality. We bring different things to the table. So when I go in and I have a nonprofit start with, I'm a poor nonprofit, and you're a goody two-shoes, well, that just doesn't work for me at all.
I guess sitting in kind of the role of government right now, the biggest challenge I see is we are risk averse, and I think many people in this room probably are naturally, but because of the political nature of our positions, that it's difficult to justify taking tax dollars and putting them into something brand new that has been unproven. So it becomes difficult to support some innovation in that way, because we want to know that it's going to work when we put money in front of it and when we put our resources toward it. And so there becomes a delicate balance that we have to strike in terms of investing in things that are proven and then also investing in something different to address a problem in a new way that may ultimately garner greater results. So I see that as our biggest challenge, is that we are by nature probably conservative, and so it goes to your point of being complacent. It can appear as being complacent. Certainly government continues to do the same thing the same way for decades, and we continue to get probably similar results. And those have not always been to the benefit of our citizens and our communities. So how do we strike that balance? How do we continue to invest in proven models while investing in something that is new, is different, and that may ultimately garner better results, and make sure that we continue to inspire confidence from the people that we serve, from our taxpayers,